How's it going, everybody? Welcome, it's Lele here, and yeah, it's finally time for the Kuma guide. I promised it some time ago, and now I feel ready to give you some tips and tricks about this friendly brown bear. A little bit of a disclaimer to start, I am absolutely not a pro player, but I feel like I reached a good enough level with this character to try and give you some pointers, especially to new bear players. Specifically, I will mention 5 steps of things we have to work on to improve and hopefully get more wins online. So without losing any more time, let's jump into it. And first off, I think we should talk about our character problems, since by knowing our flaws, we can work around them and improve our game plan. And the first problem of Kuma is terrible frames, with some important moves being minus on it and heavily unsafe on block, putting us in some very risky situations. The elephant in the room is of course bad movement. Kuma is quite big, so yeah, sidestep and backdash are gonna be bad, and that's because Kuma is pretty thick, man. Another thing is that Kuma is kind of unorthodox. He misses a lot of generic tools like down forward 1, and compared to the rest of the cast has a bigger and weird hitbox, meaning that he can get clipped more easily. This also means that some characters can get higher damage combos or straight up whiff their BMBs. And the last one is Kuma having terrible lows. His lows are either launch on block or have terrible range racked down by 3, so every time you go for them, consider you are putting yourself at a big risk. But don't let what I just said scare you. Kuma has some big weaknesses, but he also has some big strengths. So if you're a new player, maybe you wanna just try Kuma because you find funny the idea of playing a bear, or maybe you just wanna play Heihachi's real son, or maybe you just want to main a new, different and unique Tekken character, you are in the right place. Kuma can be one of the most fun characters in this game, and now I wanna show you some tips and tricks on how to improve with this guy. Neutral is one of the key aspects of Tekken 8, and for Kuma it can be kinda tricky to play it, but thankfully there is some tricks to improve it. My first advice will be to stick to the key moves. Kuma is not blessed with big and easy buttons to control the neutral, so you have to work your way around it. And, kinda obviously, it's better to stick to the good moves. You have to learn how and when to use each one of his tools, more on this later. Another advice, which I know will sound obvious for most of the players, is to not risk too much with unsafe moves. I say this because I see a lot of bear players online throw out big and unsafe buttons in the neutral. Don't get me wrong, these moves can work, but you have to set them up correctly. If you just throw them out randomly in the neutral, you will only get punished hard for it. Still speaking of unsafe moves, you should limit how many times you use some of those, 2-1-3 being the best example. It's a surprise low ender to the string that can catch a lot of players off guard. But the low kick is not guaranteed, and if you keep using it in one round, the opponent will probably figure it out and starts punishing it. What you can do is keep it as a one-time surprise move, or maybe even mix it up with 2-1-2. Another thing that you can do in the neutral is try to fish for Kuma's counter-hit tools. While his 10-frame Punisher may not be great, Kuma is blessed with an insane 10-frame counter-hit launcher being 1-1-1. This is a really easy way to contest against mashers, and if you set it up with plus on block moves like while running 1+2, you can stop your opponent from pressing too much. Even better, 1-1-1 can be used to interrupt some strings or stance options. If those have a gap, Kuma can squeeze a G-Clef cannon and not only stop pressure, but get a nice combo out of it. Your other counter-hit option is the down forward 1-2 1+2 string, that on counter-hit leads to a free Salmon Hunter. I know this string is infamous for the wall combo damage, but trust me, it's insane also in the open. Of course, it can't be all good. These strings have their problems. 1-1-1 is heavily unsafe being -16, and the down forward 1 string ends in a crouching -14 that can be heavily punished. This means that you cannot spam these moves without thinking, but you have actually to react on the counter hit indicators. I know at first it can be kinda hard to spot it, but the one jab has a different hit animations if it counter hits or not. You can see the head of Panda in this case moving way back more than normal, and you have to react on that. It's even harder for the down forward 1 string. In this case you can see a small nosebleed animation, but again, this gives you the signal that you can go for the whole string, because you gotta counter it. Another thing that you can try to spot for the down forward 1 string is this animation where Panda holds his stomach. Also this one gives you the indicator that the counter hit is on. I know I just said a minute ago that Kuma has terrible lows, but this doesn't mean you can't use them. Down back 2 is a really bad move frame-wise, being -1 on hit and -15 on block, but it's also a long-range, eye-crushing low poke that can give you a bit of damage or even close some tense rounds. Health Sweep is also very good if you don't get predictable with it, and also down back 3 is a very good low poke if you can deal with the range problems. Don't forget, you also have a safe low from full crouch 1, you have a 1-1 from sit, the 2 option from HBS, and also you have the Beyblade, which is really bad but also really funny, so you should use it. And now it's time to check the key moves. And we're gonna start with Kuma's jab, which has a lot of range and we can use it to control the screen. We've already seen that you can counter it into 1-1-1, so the one jab works both as a space control, quick check and counter it tool. If you just wanna check, stick to the one jab, because it's +8 on hit, +1 on block and has more range compared to the 2 jab, which is only +6 on hit, -1 on block, and you should keep it only for your 2-1, your 10 frame punish. Remember when I said that Kuma lacks a generic down forward 1? That's true, but he's still blessed with a really good mid check in down forward 4. It's a fast kick, coming out in 12 frames, being +7 on it and only -4 on block. The problem is that it has a very short range, so you have to be really close to your opponent for it to hit. Still, it's a very nice, quick and safe mid check to use during your pressure, being your go-to mid in a lot of cases. Kuma has also some really good hit engagers, and the best one, being also one of his best moves in general, is while running 1+2, or the headbutt. It's an hit engager on it and a nice +3 on block that can go into HBS stance for mix-up or more pressure. It also covers a lot of range thanks to Kuma jump animation, and it's your main approach tool. Also, it's a 400 kg bear hitting you with his head while jumping forward, so again, pretty funny. Jokes aside, this is one of the best moves of Kuma, so you should be using this a lot. And, if you don't already, you should learn how to instant while running to be able to use this move in any moment. Kuma, in my humble opinion, has one of the best armor moves in the game in back 1. It's a 22 frame mid with a really big hitbox and also a hit engager. Of course, it's unsafe on block, being -13, but here is where the magic starts. Back 1 can transition into HBS stance either on hit or on block by pressing Cl+4. This actually allows us to crush an eye punish from the opponent, also hitting a big launcher from below. The downside is that this transition into stance makes the move become -15 on block, risking a launch punish. But you also have the option to not go into HBS, keeping it at -13 and ruining their punish attempt. It's kind of a mix-up, either you go into HBS or not go into HBS, where you can confuse your opponent in what punish he has to use. It's one of my favorite moves of Kuma because it looks simple, but it has a lot of different layers to it. Also, it's not over for back 1, we will speak more about it later in the video. Another great option is back 1+2, an 18 frame high mid move with great range, being also an hit engager and homing. It's only -8 on block, so you are safe and you also deal some good chip damage. Like back 1, you have the option to go into HBS, but this time it doesn't change your frame data, keeping you at -8. There is not a lot that you can do at -8 from HBS, but if your opponent insists on reacting with high moves, you can crush them again with a big launcher. It's time to talk about with punishers, being forward to 1, a 12 frame high, 1+2, a 13 frame mid being also an hit engager, and down forward to 1, your 15 frame launcher. These moves are your 12, 13 and 15 frame punishers, but they also have very good range, so you can use them to whiff punish. But watch out, because they are all unsafe. 4-2-1 is only -5 on block, but it's a not jailing high so it can be crouched. 1+2 is -13 on block, and down forward 2-1 is a whopping -16 on block. Though if you react on the first hit being blocked, it's only -9, so you can keep yourself safe. Now, speaking of moves that can beat sidestep, we can start with up 2. Yes, it's 26 frames startup, but trust me, it's really good. For starters, it moves a lot forward, so you can use this move from the distance. Also, it's only -6 on block, homing, and on counter it gives you the old Tekken 7 tornado, which means really big damage combos. But being so slow, it means that you cannot just throw out this move in the neutral. You have to set up a good situation for it, or have a really good read on your opponent. Another insane move is back forward 2. It's a 15 frame high, which deals a lot of chip damage, and while it's not homing, it has really good tracking. Also, like up 2, it gives you the old Tekken 7 tornado on counter it, leading to big combos. His best use though is to create a lot of space from you and the opponent, being blessed with an incredible range. Doing back forward 2 into another back forward 2 is a legit strategy, since a lot of opponents will try to move in between and will get clipped by a massive claw. And now, for last, it's time to talk about 4-4-1+2.
Hello there.
This is another great approach tool for Kuma, while yes, it's really slow at 37 frames. On it, it leads to an insane combo damage, while on block it leads to massive plus frames, giving you a +8 into HBS or a +5 into roll. The huge downside of the move is that it's very linear, and an opponent can step it on reaction. So again, you have to set up a good situation to throw out the move, or condition your opponent into respecting you. This is just the basis of what you can do with Kuma to create a good and safe game plan. Neutral can be one of the hardest aspects of Tekken 8 for a lot of players, so I recommend you to watch some very good players to learn from them. The easy options are Rangshu and Sour Piggy, the big two Kuma gods that we're all grateful for. For last, I recommend you Giga Stekas, the guy that actually teach me all. He mainly focuses on Panda, and he also did an insane guide for the character, which you can check in the description. And now that we've seen how to play safely with Kuma, it's time to throw it all out the window and go crazy. Like I said before, Kuma is kind of unorthodox in Tekken, needing sometimes different strategies to play against some characters. While you can absolutely play regular Tekken, you can also break some rules and force your opponent to deal with some weird and strange interactions. This is why I say that while you still need a safe and good game plan, sometimes you have to go a bit crazy to surprise your opponent. And to do this, sometimes we can make lever on one of the things that the community hates the most. I'm not gonna lie, bears are very rare to find online, and there is a high chance that your opponent won't have lapped the matchup. But, in my humble opinion again, this cannot be used as an excuse against bears. Some players make the argument that Kuma and Panda are troll or knowledge check characters, but this is not our fault. It's the opponent's fault for not labbing the character, not knowing the frame data, or not knowing what to do against us. So, in my opinion, we can take full advantage of this without any remorse. Also, let me add, real good players will probably figure out and adapt on what we do during the match. And one of the best things of Kuma is the setups, creating weird situations in which we can potentially deal a lot of damage if the opponent doesn't know what's going on. Kuma has a lot of different and complex setup, but in this guide I'm just gonna show you my favorite. We can start with an instant tornado, like counter it 1-1-1, then follow up with up 2, hit burst, then up 2 again, fully charged electric, and then we end with a fully charged Salmon Hunter. Now in this situation, here is what they can do. They can wake up and block the low, or they can spring kick to stop the charge. And if they do anything else aside from these two options, yeah, they basically... Yeah, they basically die. GG shake my salmon, I guess? What I love about this setup is that even if they stand up and block, we are not in a bad position. Fully charged Salmon Hunter is only -4 on block, and it also deals a whopping 25 chip damage, so I can make the argument that even if they block it, it's still in our favor. And again, this is only one of the many setups that Kuma can have in different situations, more or less complex. You can find more setups by searching online, but I'm leaving on screen some players that are really good at discovering new tech with Kuma, so you should check them out. And especially check my man Formation, Smith, which I humbly consider the best chef when it comes to cooking bear setups. But now let's continue, and let's talk about what happens when we face a good opponent, where knowledge check and setups stop working. Well, in that case, you can only rely on your tools, and when the time comes, you have to believe in your reads. This is a thing I always say to the Kuma mains I play with, which is believe in your reads to change the flow of a match. Kuma is a character that can take huge risks, but if he is successful, it will give massive rewards in return. Analyze how your opponent plays, try to find a flowchart or something they keep doing, and when the time comes, believe in your read to deal massive damage. For example, try to read the flowchart of your opponent and squeeze a 1-1-1 if there's a gap in it. Or, if they keep using linear moves, step them and hit a big launcher. Or my favorite one, if they get predictable with a low, absolutely crush them with a well-placed 4-4-1+2 for massive damage. So don't just stand there, eating your opponent's flowcharts and pressure, but show them that you can react to it and give them a hard time. Also remember sometimes to keep your opponent in check with some surprise moves, like up 1, up back 1+2, which can also be fake cancelled into HBS, or your roll 1, which in it becomes a guard break. So again, with Kuma, you need a good and safe game plan, but you should also be ready to take some risk in some moments to change a match. But, like I said at the start, there is no need for unnecessary risk. If you are in a good life lead, or if you can't get a good read on your opponent, don't just throw out big moves. Be patient, wait for the perfect moment and go for it. There are still more layers to talk about Kuma, and now it's time to see his pressure game. In Tekken 8, pressure is the name of the game, being the key game plan around most characters. And thankfully, Kuma can play this really well. Remember that you are a big body, meaning that in a lot of situations you don't have the option to sidestep or backdash out of pressure. One answer to this problem is actually you being the one on the offense, pressuring the opponent before he can pressure you. And thankfully, you have some very good tools to do it. I'm talking about War Running 1+2, 4-4-1+2, the charge moves, and of course, his insane hit. We'll talk more about hit later in the video, so for now, let's see how Kuma can play pressure without hit. And let me start by talking about 4-4-1+2, being the move that gives you the most amount of plus frames on block, with a whopping +8 into HBS. We have already talked about HBS stance crushing eyes, so your opponent will probably try to answer with a mid. And still, there are some options out of the stance that will get interrupted even with a +8 on block. This means that first we have to stop the opponent from mashing, and to do this we can use some guaranteed options if the opponent decides to press. These options are 1-2, down forward 2, 1+2, and down 1+2. After this, the opponent will probably start to respect the move. This means that we have more freedom, and we can also start mixing with lows and throw. The situation is similar, but way worse with the roll, which we can access by holding forward after 4-4-1+2. Here we get only a +5 on block, and the 2, 3 and 4 options can be jab floated. The only fast option, which will trade with jabs, is roll 1. So again, scare your opponents with roll 1, and then when they start respecting you, you can start to mix your options. Now it's time to talk about Warani 1+2, which we already discussed as being one of your main approach tools. You have the option to go into HBS, but either way the move will stay at +3 on block. This means that you will get a lot of disrespect out of it, so again, you have to scare your opponent, keep him on his toes, and then force him to respect you. And as you may have already understood, Kuma has the tools to make the opponent regret mashing. Yes, we are talking again about 1-1-1, but this move truly deserves it. Remember to spot the different animation for the counter hit, and you will punish hard your opponent for moving. But if you are not sure that your opponent will move or not, keep it safer with 1-2, which will still deal very good damage. Instead, if you want to safely mid-check, use down 4-4, which can actually reach after a blocked Warani 1+2. And for last, from the stance, we have HBS 1-2, giving you a nice damage which can also be perfect charged. More on this in a second. Also remember you can just HBS 1, and on counter it will lead to a guaranteed forward 2-1. After getting hit by this, the opponent will probably start respecting the move, giving you more freedom to explore your options. You can go for lows, HBS mix, cheap damage moves, or throws. Don't forget, you can also start going for more pressure, doing another Warani 1+2 or a 4-4 1+2. And now it's time to talk about charge moves. I already made a guide about charge moves, but I will give you a fast recap here. This works with HBS 1-2, while standing 1-2, and down back 1-2, which can all be charged in 4 different ways, heavily changing their hit and block reactions. And let's start with the no charge option, which is a natural hit, giving you a +4 for down back 1-2 and HBS 1-2, and even a +6 for while standing 1-2. The downside is that all these moves are -13 on block. For these reasons, you should keep the no charge version just as your punishers, with while standing 1-2 being your 13 frame while standing punisher, and down back 1-2 being a good 14 frame punisher. Next on the list is the small charge option, which we can do by barely holding the 2 button. This version allows us to beat the charge worst enemy, which is the interruption from the opponent. Even better, we get some really nice counter hit rewards if we catch the opponent moving. On the second hit counter hit, while standing 1-2 gives us massive plus frames, HBS 1-2 leads to a free while standing 1-2, and down back 1-2 puts us at +13, which is enough for 1+2, a free hit engager. Of course, this all comes with a downside, which is that the move won't be a natural hit anymore. This means that even if the first hit connects, the second will be blocked, putting us at -13. This charge version should be used if your opponent keeps trying to interrupt or even sidestep the charge, to scare him and keep him in check. Also remember to watch out for this trade interaction, which puts you at so many plus frames that you get a free launcher. As we mentioned before, you also have the perfect charge option. You can get this one by holding a charge at his half point, and you will know you got it because of those orange claws on screen. The downsides of this version is that it's not a natural hit, it's -12 on block, and loses to fast interrupt moves like jabs and even sidestep. You should use this version only when the first hit counter hits, getting again a free 1+2 after a perfect down back 1-2, a while standing 1-2 follow up on a perfect HBS 1-2, and massive plus frames on while standing 1-2. Practice your perfect charges in practice mode, because the rewards you can get out of it are incredible. And for last, we have the infamous full charge, giving you a very nice +3 on block. It has all the weaknesses of the precedent charge types, losing heavily to interrupts and sidestep, and not being natural even on counter hit. You should keep this one, of course, for pressure, keeping the opponent in check with the +3 and the cheap damage on block. But if you just throw out full charge moves in the neutral, expecting people to stand and wait for you, you'll be disappointed. What you can do is mix up your charge type, annoying the opponent with the full charge and then throwing out the small charge when you think they will be impatient, getting the nice counter hit reward. Now, still speaking of pressure, it's time to talk about mix-ups, and Kuma has no mix-up. Like, seriously, you wanna play mix-up with this character? Yeah, mix-up is really not one of Kuma's strengths. His mix-up options are either too slow or too risky to throw out. You can go for them to surprise your opponent, and you should also explore all your stance options to put him in check. But again, your lows are either very slow or very risky to throw out, and your HBS throw is surprisingly easy to react on. So you don't have really much options that will make the opponent crouch out of fear from you. But, thankfully for us, there is a new Tekken mechanic in which Kuma really shines, and it is chip damage. A lot of Kuma moves deal very good chip damage, and you can also chain them together during your pressure to really scare your opponent. Now, sitting with a lot of white health, is where the HBS throw becomes really scary, with the opponent that might press or crouch out of fear. In those moments, you will have to read your opponent and predict what he will do, either catching him because he was scared of the throw, or actually use the throw to cash out all the white health. Since we are on the topic, another thing that I suggest you to do with Kuma is to maximize your combo and wall damage. We all know that Kuma really shines on the damage he can deal, so you should be sharp at every opportunity that the opponent gives to you. I'm gonna link in the description some very good combo guides and also one of my own on enders to use to reach the wall. Because if you can, you should always, and I mean always, reach the wall. Not only for the insane wall hander with the down forward 1 delayed string, but also because having the opponent at the wall is the best position for Kuma. This kinda sums up how we can play pressure. You really need to make the opponent respect you, then you can vary your offense, putting even more pressure with your cheap damage. Then you can capitalize on the opponent's mistakes or lack of patience. Maximize every opportunity you get, because with Kuma there is a chance that you won't get too many. But of course, we cannot only play aggression, we also need some very good defense. I'm gonna mention this again, but you are a big body, meaning a really bad backdash and sidestep that won't allow you to evade some moves. When online you hear that a move is steppable, that might not be the case for our friendly brown bear. Still, while your movement might not be an option sometimes, Kuma still has some very good and also weird defensive options. You'll understand what I mean in a second. For now, if your opponent is overwhelming you with his pressure, remember to stay calm, be patient, and find your moment to break free, because you can rely on one of Kuma's strengths, which is his punishers. And we can start with 2-1, which is not exactly a great 10-frame punisher, but we'll take it. The only interesting part about this move is the 2-1-3 or 2-1-2 extensions. Next on the list is forward 2-1, which is a very good 12-frame punisher with good range, damage, giving us a knockdown and even a wall splat. Then at 13 frame we have 1+2, being also a hit engager. Then at 14 we have the booty, down 1+2 or down back 1-2. The booty is a wall splat, but has less range and damage compared to down back 1-2. But in my opinion, if you still have it to activate, I will suggest you to punish a -14 still with 1+2. And for last, at 15 frames, we have down forward 2-1, with an amazing range and potential damage, while being very risky to throw out at -16. For while standing punishers instead, we don't have anything too special, with 4 being your 11 frame, 1-2 no charge your 13 frame, 2 your 15 frame launcher, and 3+4 to use against stagger lows at 23 frames. Also remember, you have a wall standing 3, which is also a homing move. But I know that playing with Punisher requires a good matchup knowledge, and maybe sometimes the pressure keeps going without ending in unsafe moves, and in those situations we need to interrupt the opponent. Yes, this is the 5th time we're gonna talk about 1-1-1, but I seriously cannot stress enough how good this move is. If your opponent pressure has gaps, Jigglypuff Cannons is perfect to squeeze in between, so stay patient, read the flowchart of your opponent and find the gap where you can safely get out. Also remember that 1-1-1 is a legit answer against some stance options, even if there is the tiniest of gaps. And also remember that you have a safer option, 1-2, which is still a 10 frame counter hit move. After getting stopped like this, the opponent might try to answer with power crushes or eye crushing moves, and in that moment is where we can start using back 1. As we already mentioned, the hitbox makes this a very good answer against moves or even stances that can eye or mid crush, so if you are too overwhelmed, think of back 1 like your get out of jail card, of course if you have an enough gap to squeeze the move. And remember that if the opponent blocks, you can also mix by going or not going into HBS. But again, the opponent will answer to this, maybe with lows and throws which can beat the armor, or even with stopping the pressure and just blocking. so it's up to you to read your opponent and respond accordingly. With your Punisher and interrupts, you can get out of pressure, but when those fail, Kuma might help you with his weird but still working evasion. Yes, you heard me right. This 400 kg brown bear has actually a very good evasion, and he can crush high or even mid moves. This all comes down to Kuma, and also Panda, having a really weird hitbox for the Tekken standards. I'm gonna be honest, after all the weird things that I've seen and experienced online with this hitbox, I'm not even gonna try to explain or understand how a lot of these work. What I can tell you though, is that some moves can reliably crush highs and even mids. We have already talked about HBS stance crushing highs, and now it's time to talk about HBS 1+2. You can see that for a split frame, Kuma lowers his head, and in that exact moment he can crush a mid. Yes, in a real match this is a total robbery, and your opponent will probably lose his mind. Next is a move we haven't talked about, 442. It's a long-range launcher with a lot of potential damage, but it's very risky to throw out, being slow, extremely linear and unsafe at -19. But against opponents that love checking with jabs, it's a very good tool, since Kuma again lowers his head and can crush highs. Kuma's sidestep is bad also because our character is too large, but there is actually a way to gain that extra distance thanks to sidestep 1+2. This is a very weird move that gives our character that extra bit of space that will actually make him step a move, for then a guaranteed down 1+2 follow-up. The problem is that you gotta commit to the move, you can't actually react with it, but you gotta have the read and throw it out. The move even gives you a combo on counter it, but it's probably the weirdest Kuma combo, requiring you to start with a 2-jab to keep the opponent floating. I'm gonna link in the description a guide made by Nesmith on the move, which will actually explain you how the move works and how to use it efficiently. And this sums up Kuma's defense game. You need a lot of patience and knowledge with this character, being able to punish unsafe moves or stop pressure when there is a gap. And if the situation gets problematic, Kuma's evasion might help you. But now, it's time to talk about the most important aspect of Kuma. Up until now, this has not only been a Kuma guide, but also a Panda guide, since outside of it they are basically the same character. So with this in mind, I want you to truly understand how much heat is vital to Kuma's game plan, putting him whole tiers above Panda just for it. So let me start by saying that you should absolutely use heat in every round. Don't make it go to waste, there is no need to hold on to it. Heat is what legit turns Kuma from a bottom tier character into one of the best in the game. I really cannot stress enough how heat is important for you. There is a high chance that it will end up being the reason you win or lose a round, allowing you to turn back even the most desperate situations. And I think we should start talking about Heat Burst. While it's a very good panic button to use against pressure, I think you should avoid using Heat Burst. And the reason is quite simple, being that Heat Burst depletes a bit of your hit bar, meaning having less heat for all the other stuff that we can do. And trust me, the other stuff is way more worth it, so I'd suggest you to stick with hit engagers, which actually leave you with the full bar. But there are still some situations in which it's actually a good idea to use Hit Burst, and they are the following. If you're really low on health and can get an hit engager as a way to try and desperately turn around the match. If you need it during a combo or a setup, especially if you need it to increase your wall travel. And if your opponent is shoulders against the wall, to start your insane pressure. Beware though, Hit Burst only leaves you at +1 on block and +2 on hit. But aside from these situations, I really suggest you to avoid random Hit Burst during a round. And with this out of the way, it's time to see what heat actually does for Kuma. Remember when we talked about roll mix being a bit lackluster? Well, Kuma's hit will enhance it, giving an hitbox to the roll, and this new version will be +7 on hit and +1 on block, forcing the opponent to respect the mids. But this is not the best part. The best use for this is for one of Kuma's combo enders. Enhance the roll into a guaranteed down 1+2, which will add a flat 22 damage to your combo. It only works with certain routes, but the damage reward will be great. Also remember that in it, your roll 1 becomes a guard break for a guaranteed forward 2-1. And I say this because I always forget about this, but it's a really nice surprise tool to have. Remember when I said that the full charge is not a natural combo even on counter it? Well, in it that will happen, and the damage it's actually insane. The hit will shorten the charge time and add more chip damage, making it way more scary. But beware, the full charge will still lose to interrupt and sidestep. What you should do with the enhanced charge is fish for counter hits, which will lead into explosive combos. And now it's finally time for probably the second best Kuma move, your real ace in the hole, the move that made me fall in love with this character, the Wind Bear Fist, or simply Bear Electric. Kuma goes full Heihachi mode, pulling out one of the best mids in the game for an insane pressure, probably one of the best and most annoying pressures in the game, since there is very little counterplay to it. The Bear Electric can be done with down forward 2+3 or with the Mishima input of forward, down forward 2+3 for 3 more damage. It's a special mid, meaning that the opponent can dodge it and will block it even crouching. It comes out in 15 frames with an insane +5 on block, meaning that 2 Bear Electrics in a row will trade in your favor with a jab. You also have the option to charge the Bear Electric, making it come out at 25 frames with an absurd +9 on block. And if this wasn't enough, it will also Eye Crush and beat Power Crush moves. The real enemy of the Bear Electric is the movement, with the opponent that can backdash or, if it has a good sidestep, even step the move. This is why you should not just spam Bear Electrics in a row, but actually add different moves into the mix, depending on what your opponent starts to do. And also, this is why I said that the wall is the best position for Kuma, forcing the opponent to hit your pressure without a way out. And for last, I don't think I even need to mention it anymore, but the Bear Electric combo damage is insane, especially if you can hit a fully charged one. And now it's time for the grand finale, the one I consider the absolute best Kuma move, his Hit Smash. I will add, in my humble opinion, that this is one of the best Hit Smashes in the game. I know a lot of people talk about Jack or Jun being the best, but this is a very strong contender for the crown. For starters, it's one of the fastest Hit Smashes in the game, coming out in 13 frames, so you can use this as a reliable punisher with his respectable 51 damage. It's +10 on block, which becomes an insane +22 against the wall. This, together with Bear Electric and all, fits very well in his pressure game. You will think that now I'm gonna mention some kind of downsides, but not this time. This move seriously has everything. It has insane range, it has actually good tracking, it can wall break, it can be used as a combo ender, and in some precise position it can even be used as a wall splat. Seriously, this move has everything, so the only reasonable tip that I can give you is to use it every time. If your hit bar is low, don't just waste it, throw it out even if you know your opponent is gonna block it. I don't even know how to recap Kuma's hit, aside from Kuma's hit is busted and will make you win matches. But seriously, hit is what's gonna make the difference for Kuma, so always make sure you use it good. You can use it for pressure, for damage, for punishers or for setups, but whatever you do, make sure it's 100% worth it. Without it, you will be back to the regular old brown bear. And with this, we have finally reached the end of the guide. I know it's been very long, so first I want you to truly say thank you for watching. I hope that you found this helpful and that some of the things I said will help you improve with Kuma. If I can give you one last tip before I go, remember to always take your time. Kuma can be a really frustrating character to play online, especially if you're new with him, but just focus on improving and having fun, the wins will come, trust me. And before I wrap it up, I want to give some special thanks to the bear players that actually asked me and encouraged me to do this guide, to the ones that helped me a lot with editing and data, and to the ones that actually teach me all the things you have just seen in this guide. Thank you so much, boys! And for last, I want to thank you again for watching and for giving Kuma a chance. Consider subscribing if you want more Kuma content, since I'll keep doing guides, but on smaller and more niche aspects of this awesome character. And also leave a comment if you want some more information or if something is not clear. So hopefully I will see you all in the next one.